Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to BotBrained.ai. Now, today we're going to be talking about MCP servers because typically it's an acronym. It's a term that's thrown around. A lot of people new to AI still don't fully understand what they are, what they do. But effectively, what they are individual servers that enable your AI agent, whether you're running Claude Code, Codex, Hermes agent, OpenClaw, whatever, rather than having to copy prompts and things from your AI agent, pasting them into whatever application like Lovable, Higgsfield, as you see I have open now. Any of these are just a couple of many examples. But rather than having to copy your prompt and then paste them into that platform to get your generative result, an MCP server basically is like an underground pipe that goes directly from your AI to the platform and does everything for you within your system, whatever system you're using, whether it's your AI agent or your AI harness, your OpenClaw or your Claude Code. So this video is specifically about that, and we're going to discuss it from here. Okay, so you're wanting to basically set up an MCP server for whatever the service or application, whether it's image generation or some other tool or feature or function that's useful in your app, or something that you want to utilize in Claude Code or Hermes or something to that effect. Installing them are really simple. It used to be where you needed to use your command line interface, and you'd have a command line and all of that. You don't have to do any of that anymore. Okay. So, and that's what used to confuse a lot of people, and people still talk about doing it that way, which is crazy. I truly believe that a lot of YouTubers, and there's still a lot of people out there that try to make everything so much more complex than it really is, just so that you rely on them for everything. And I'm doing this in the complete opposite way. I want you to be able to be self-reliant, not have to go through all of the hardest things, the ways that we used to have to do things, and instead favor the easiest way of doing things now. So let's just say hypothetically, if you're on Higgsfield, okay, you've got your Higgsfield account for your image and video generation, but you don't want to have to go to Higgsfield anymore to do it. You don't want to have to copy your prompt from Claude and then paste it into Higgsfield. So like we've been doing in the first, like the couple of video challenges. So rather than paste these prompts and you have to basically do all this, all you have to do is, if you go up here to the top, and I'm going to assume that because I'm using it, you're likely using either Codex or Claude Code. Now, it doesn't matter what platform you're using. If you go to the top and you click MCP and CLI, this makes it super easy to install the MCP server for your account. And I'm not going to do this because I'm already patched in. I don't want to do it all again, but I'm telling you it's very simple. If you go to this page, you'll see here you've got buttons or tabs for Claude, ChatGPT, Cursor, Claude Code, OpenClaw, and Hermes. And this is for the direct MCP server. You also have CLI if you want to use that. I don't bother with that. But let's just say I'm in Claude Code. This is a simple copy and paste. You copy this, paste it into your Claude Code, and hit return. That's it. Claude Code already goes out. It gets the documentation necessary. It reads it real quick, and it says, okay, I have to do XYZ to connect this as a new pipeline. Then all that happens is you get a prompt, and it'll tell you, Claude Code will tell you, or Hermes, or any of these agents will tell you, I'm going to open a new window so that you can authenticate. And what happens is a new window pops up in your web browser, and it will give you a window that says, click here to authenticate. It wants to make sure you're logged into an account. Once you're logged in and you authenticate that data transfer, from then on, it remembers who you are. It knows what your account is in Higgsfield, or even in this case, Lovable, okay? Because Lovable does the same thing. You have a Lovable MCP server. And then once that's done, you can go into your Claude Code and say, create an image for this, okay? And what it'll do is it'll create its own prompt, send that prompt to Higgsfield, create the image, and then spit it right back out at you within whatever harness you're using. You no longer have to go to Higgsfield to create the images or do that. And this is especially more user friendly if you have a monthly account on Higgsfield or Lovable or any of the platforms, because these do use tokens. Okay, even if you have an unlimited account on something like Higgsfield or what have you, it's still using your tokens. It's not using your unlimited account. It's almost as if you're using an API system. Okay, now, and for those of you that don't know, I'm going to explain briefly the difference between your monthly, well, I already did this in a previous video, so I shouldn't have to do that again, but effectively you have your monthly subscription, which is ultimately a subsidized number of tokens. So you might use, let's just say hypothetically, you might use 5,000 tokens a month, but you're only actually paying for like 500. The remaining 4,500 of those tokens is basically paid for and absorbed by the platform you're paying the monthly service fee to. And the reason for this is, number one, they take a lot of the data, I'm sure, and that you use, the things you build, the errors that are made and resolved in the process, et cetera, and they're using that to further train their models for the next iteration so that the model is better equipped and more in tune with what people want to build and how to get from point A to point B without as many errors. So you've got that. Plus, somebody, you might have 100 people and they pay, $100 a month for a Claude Code account, but only like 10% of those people are actually using the maximum number of tokens that they can, while the rest are using it kind of for, asking questions and doing little things here and there. They don't really know the full power, they know the whole extent of what's possible with these models. So they're not using all of the tokens that they could if they were actually building applications and things, but they're still paying the same money. So it's almost like this group is kind of paying for the power group, and the power group is effectively paying their membership, but a lot of their work is going into making the models better. Okay, so that's the difference there. Whereas if that's for like a subsidized monthly payment account, right? It's far superior, it's much cheaper, it's better overall. The problem is you have to use their internal harnesses. You have to use Claude Code or with like Codex for OpenAI. You have to use their harnesses to get access to these monthly accounts. If you're trying to build something that makes a call to one of these agents or one of these language models or frontier models, you do that through an API, which is basically a direct pipeline into the into like a cloud service or something to that effect, or like through Anthropic or OpenAI. And it's giving you the same power of the model you're used to using in Claude Code, but you're using it in an actual application itself that's calling upon that model to effectively, make calculations or process data or process information, but it's outside of that harness. And so I guess the easiest way of explaining that is it's probably not training its own like next generation of models as much on your API data, that sort of thing, but you're paying per token. Okay. And every model has a very specific cost per token. Now, even in your subscription package, your $200 a month pro account or your $100 a month pro account, that too is altered in how many tokens you use and the cost of those tokens that have been allocated to your monthly subscription service. That is also used up faster or not as fast, depending on the cost associated with the individual model you're using. So depending on what you're doing within the harness, such as Claude Code, I might be writing a story. So I might be using Claude Sonnet 5. That is going to be cheaper cost input and output. So it's typically like, $1 per million tokens input, $5 per million tokens output, right? So it's the cost of your input, what you're telling it to do and process, and then the cost for the output, which is the number of tokens used to deliver the outcome of what you're prompting or what you're proposing. Okay. So that all being said, an MCP server is similar to that of like an API with a different purpose. And it just patches you directly into a tool or service that you're trying to use within your harness so that you don't have to bounce back and forth between the two. The same is true for Lovable. If you use Lovable to build websites, well, you can build the websites using the tokens available in your Lovable plan, but you're going to go back and forth through a lot of iterations and things. I've learned that even though I'm like a diamond member on Lovable, I've built a lot of platforms using it, and it's great. I'm also building more now just strictly within Claude. But sometimes if I'm building a website inside of Claude Code, in some instances, I don't need to use all of the resources that Claude Code pipes in, like Vercel or Supabase or any of these things. I can just pipe them all directly into Lovable, let Lovable set up all of that and manage it in the Lovable cloud for me to make things a lot easier. And in Lovable's cloud, there are so many different things from Supabase, your Stripe accounts, all of that stuff can be handled within Lovable itself. But outside of that, I can do all of the heavy lifting using my Claude membership account, get a final prompt and outcome or a build plan, pipe that directly into Lovable, or just send it. If I want to make an update to a website on my Lovable account, I can do that from Claude Code. If I want to build a website, I can build it in Claude Code, send it directly to Lovable, and I'm ultimately using less of my Lovable tokens and in favor of using some of my monthly membership tokens. And not every platform out there has an MCP server or an MCP account, but many of them are. Okay, so this is something that you're going to find very, very useful, especially when you get more into the ranks of becoming a power user. And if you're trying to use a tool, whether it's Zapier, Higgsfield, Lovable, Google, anything, typically all you have to do is say, hey, Claude. You don't have to say, hey, Claude, but does this platform have an MCP server that I can connect you to? And Claude will go out and find it for you. And it'll say, yes, as a matter of fact, it does. Or no, there currently isn't an MCP server offering. But that's it. And over time, everything's going to have some form of MCP server for your AI agents. They're all coming through. And as I understand it, I think Anthropic is the one that launched these MCP servers back in 2024 and basically started distributing them out to everybody. And more people are adopting them. So that's it in a nutshell. That's what an MCP server is. I would tell you, though, that rather than jump directly into using an MCP server for something, do it manually first for a while so that you understand what you're trying to get and what you're getting manually. You can make those changes and fixes because ultimately you want to make sure that your prompts are really good at first too. So I want you to practice more with the prompting, copy them, paste them to the platforms you want. What's the output you're getting? Understand that process better before you immediately start connecting MCP servers. It's not that it's a bad idea or bad thing, but the more you understand about what's going on behind the scenes, when you eliminate that middleman, which is you effectively, it's better to understand what's actually happening from point A to point B, taking you out of that equation from the manual work of bouncing back and forth. You want to understand what's actually going on. So if something happens, you can identify it and you have a better understanding as to how to resolve it. Okay. So this is all very helpful. You're going to use them and you're going to love them, but spend at least a week or two, especially as you're going through this community and going through the challenges and doing the different things, just to better understand understand exactly what's happening, when, how, so that you can resolve them in the future should something go wrong. And like I always say, if you don't know, just ask your agent. Your agent should be able to spell it out for you pretty clearly. Until next time, thank you for joining me on BotBrained.ai. I'll see you soon.